before months have.
Hello and welcome to the podcast by Cruel Commons, where we discuss art, advertising, and culture at our lovely home, 8708 Avenue. Beside me today, again, I have my co-host, the wonderful, the lovely, the fabulous Julia Cherry. Welcome, Julia.
Those were a lot of big words.
Well, do you not think you're wonderful, lovely, and
I think I'm all of
fabulous?
those things, but we stay humble on this podcast.
We do. We try to. We don't at all.
You look great.
You're
not supposed to talk yet.
I feel a little ignored, to be honest.
All right, well,
good micro content.
Good prompt. Good prompt. Today we've got another very special guest, someone very close to our heart here at Cruel. He's an artist, a fashion designer, at times a DJ. He's shown at Paris Fashion Week. He's shown at New York Fashion Week, at many different fashion weeks, all the fashion weeks. His clothes have been worn by the likes of Joe Jonas, Steph Curry, Future. It was definitely not Joe Jonas. It was definitely Nick Jonas. But c'est la vie. The one, the only, Mr. Saturday. Welcome, Joey Gollish.
That's a really nice introduction.
Welcome to the couch. I fucked it up. Did Joe Jonas wear your clothes, or was it Nick Jonas?
Don't put me on the spot like that.
It was Nick.
Which of all the Jonases have worn his clothes?
It wasn't Joe, because I feel like I would have felt like a fellow Joe, kind of thing,
Joe thing. All right.
It was Nick. I put it in many.
I think they've all worn it at some point.
All the Jonases.
Yeah.
I've heard
they share clothes.
Everyone says that all the Jonases have worn your clothes. So
everybody says that.
That's what's going around the block. Well, thank you for joining us today. How are things?
Things are great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you on the couch. Let's start off with an easy one. Who is Joey Gollish? Who is Mr. Saturday? Are those the same people? Give us a little bit of an intro.
Call that an easy one. I can't wait for what's next. Who am I is a question.
Yes, who are you is the question, yes.
I'm the founder and creative director of Mr. Saturday. I think in the shortest form, Mr. Saturday is a luxury ready-to-wear brand. We do men's and women's, primarily show at Paris Fashion Week. And we're really just trying to push the boundaries of luxury fashion for Canadian brands. As a person, who am I? I'm all the things that you said I am, but also, kind of just figuring out my way through an industry that, I don't have a lot of experience in, and kind of trying to share those lessons along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's seemed like an obvious one to have you on the couch here, because we have been working together for quite a bit of time now, kind of on and off since, the origins of both of our brands, really. It seemed like a natural fit to get you on the couch here, get you chatting about some of our times together, but also about your brand, about the experiences you've had developing the brand. And I'm sure some of the people watching are really interested to hear how things are going and how things have gone in the past and some of that journey. So yeah, looking forward to talking about it today. I know Julia was very excited because you dressed us today.
Yeah.
I was also very excited.
I basically was searching my closet last night, and I was like, I have nothing to wear, and I got really upset, and I texted Joey. I was like, can you dress me tomorrow?
My first question was like, this is being filmed?
He's like, oh wait, I think I knew that.
Well, look, if you can see my nipples through my shirt, I'm sorry. This is fashion, so you got to make some concessions. Fashion is pain, so let's. Why don't we start off with some questions about the brand? I want to hear more about the brand. Although I do know a lot about it, I think that there's still, hearing it from you originally is still a really insightful moment. So what was what is really at the heart of the Mr. Saturday brand? What is the kind of underpinning that you've kind of been pursuing since you started the brand, or since you've kind of found the the ideology behind the clothing?
Yeah, I feel like finding the ideology in the brand was sort of retrospective. Once the ball was rolling, it was really what am I doing, and a little bit of personal exploration. But I think Mr. Saturday for me, as far as a name, has always just been a version of myself that I wanted to be. I mean, when I started the brand, I wasn't really in a creative field, and when I would go out on weekends or DJ or do something, it's the person I was in that moment is felt like the truest version of myself. And so I called the brand Mr. Saturday because I wanted to create that feeling for other people when they were wearing the clothes. But it also had so much to do with nightlife. It was always about how I live through nightlife and how the brand lives and breathes through nightlife. And so looking at that, I realized that so much of my interest was in historical nightlife. And what I mean by that is, moments in nightlife history that have affected subculture and then how that's turned into mainstream culture. Mm-hmm. And so now at this point, I really see Mr. Saturday as a wearable museum that documents the history of nightlife and its impact on culture.
Yeah, that's dope.
I love that. I think that was one of the early moments when I started to really like see the uptake of the brand or see the potential in the brand was coming to one of your fittings early on, probably in I'd say like 2017 maybe.
In our old office.
Yeah, in the old office in Liberty that we shared in Liberty Village. Shout out Liberty Village.
Oh my god!
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Shout out Dom. Shout
I'm gonna get in trouble for the shout out. I just got a beam from Mac. Don't give me that. Don't give me that shit. All right,
man. Every time
I'm doing the shout outs. Okay.
We should kind of get into that, like sort of like the DJing and everything a little bit more though, because like from what I've heard from all the stories, you've done everything from like.
Wait, I don't get to finish my story about the fitting. What the hell? I was at the start of a story. No,
you were doing the thing.
That was where I was getting to. Because I remember coming into one of the parties and being like. Or one of the fittings and being like, this is not a fitting. This is a straight up party.
Yeah.
Like being like, I thought we were going to talk about fashion and like maybe have like a glass of champagne. And I remember walking in and being like, this is so much more than just clothes. Like there's a real energy in the room here that isn't just about, it's not like going to a fitting at Harry Rosen where, it's very prim and proper. It was, felt much more cultural and much more significant and that combined with the music element and everything like that seemed to drive the brand in a direction that had a lot more depth than just clothes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always just been, a feeling. One of my best friends and staff, Lucas, always says we don't sell clothes, we sell ideas.
There you go.
But that's because we ship so late.
Yeah. But it's just the idea of the clothes arriving at one day. Yeah.
But no, I know what you're talking about. We used to call those Saturday circuses. I think the point of those is like, yeah, you were there to talk about clothes, but it doesn't have to be this like pretentious sit down glass of champagne and like pretend we're something we're not. I mean, the feeling was really always supposed to be, when you're like at a club or when you're out or something and you see somebody's got a pair of sunglasses, you're like, oh my God, I fucking love those.
Yeah.
Can I try those on? It's like, how do you recreate that feeling of like the freedom and the fun that you can have trying on clothes within that setting? And it's still something we try to do today.
Yeah.
When we do pop-ups or when we do shop and shops with some of our retail partners, Selfridges is like, oh, why do you need 20 bottles of champagne for your pop-up? And I'm like, you'll see.
You will understand. It's gonna be cool.
It's like the connection and all the people and like openness, which is so different than like a lot of other shopping experiences.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it is and it isn't. If you go into like a Rick Owens or a Margiela store, I mean, there's scent branding, there's audio branding, and I think for us, that's just our way of doing it. Music and sound and light
and alcohol
and scent, those are all sensory experiences, and that's not to say that you have to be fucked up to enjoy our brand or to participate in it. Like a lot of the people, a lot of my like good friends are completely sober, but it's really about creating that experience of the freedom of nightlife.
Oh, I love that. I think that the nightlife underpinning and that idea of like culture kind of spilling over from subcultures was always what made the brand a bit more interesting to me. But yeah, like let's talk about how you kind of like establish that like personal brand and kind of built out.
I think Julia had a question. You guys were interrupting.
We had the same question.
It was the same. Yeah, we call each other lovely, but you bicker quite a bit.
I know we do bicker.
We finish each other's sandwiches.
That's part of the deal. We do finish each other's sandwiches. Yeah, Julia, what was the question?
It was the same question as that you had.
Was the same question?
Just not so long-winded, to be honest.
Yeah. God damn it.
It's more short-winded.
Tom did it again. Fuck. Yeah. So like, how did you start building that personal brand? What were some of the early moments or early things that you did early on that really drove the brand, in one direction or the other? And then how did that develop over time?
I mean, it's like if I were to tell you it in the way that you asked the question, it would sound very calculated. But I do think that a lot of it was very just like, doing what I felt in the moment. I think I've always loved music and DJing. I wanted to be a DJ before I wanted to be a designer until I realized like how shitty tour life seems. And maybe that's just a way of making myself feel less bad about just not being a successful DJ. But I think, having those moments with crowds and being able to control an environment like that and drive like a feeling and feeding off of energy has always been so fun for me. So I've always prioritized DJing as like really a hobby. And I think the other things that we do through the brand or that I do personally are really just extensions of things that I like doing. And I'm fortunate enough to do what I love for a living, so it all sort of feeds into each other, right? I think I try to like see the activities that we do or that I do personally or with the brand as like, would I pay to do this? Like, I recently DJ'd at like a small private party in New York, and I was like, I would have paid $10,000 to do what I just did.
Just to have the opportunity
to do what I just did. Yeah,
That's
and that's sort of how I like try to look at like things that I want to do.
Well, yeah, no, you're very fortunate to be at that point. And I think that, like, I mean, that's similar to kind of like what we do here at Cruel, and the reason that we love like working at Cruel is that, like, yeah, there are moments where I was like, where I'm saying like I would pay for this opportunity.
Yeah,
I think we get into those moments all the time.
Well, I think like moving on, how have you managed to get your clothes on so many celebrities?
Interesting question. I think that's really like time and a snowball effect. When I first started doing Mr. Saturday, it was such a priority of mine, and now it's not like it isn't a priority, but it's a lot more organic.
Yeah.
So I think for brands like mine, which are, we sell in retail stores and boutiques, we usually have a showroom. Ours is hosted at our PR office, Chapter 2 in New York. And really the way that most of it happens is that stylists will come in and pick through the brands, and if they're a fan of our brand, they'll ask for clothes specifically, or they'll look through a lookbook from a runway and say, this person wants to wear this look on this show. Is it available? And it works like that. We don't do a ton of outreach about it anymore. I think that fashion's one of those funny industries where, like, when I started, I would knock on every door, but I realized there's such a cool factor. And in some ways, we're trying to like break that down by like being more transparent and being open, but you can't really ask for too much. You just kind of have to take what's given to you and do the most with it. But on the other hand, we get amazing opportunities. Like sometimes when you do style somebody, you meet them and, you become friends or grow that relationship. And so I'm really fortunate to work with a few different artists like that. And when we get to make custom clothes, like, really notable memory for me is obviously doing SNL with Gunna. Those are really just based more on like, personal relationships and what the vibe's like between, myself and an artist, and building something from there.
Yeah.
Early on though, when you so you said like, you don't do outreach anymore. When you did do the outreach originally, was that just like cold DMs to like stylists that you kind of like creeped out?
I've definitely done a lot of like really cringe shit that I wouldn't say like don't DMs. Do it. I think there's just like a moment in your career where it's like you go from being really fledgling to being more established, where you have to kind of consider how people perceive you, and not in a way of being like, too pretentious about it, but just really like, oh, like where am I in my trajectory and how should I be kind of handling things. But I would say if it's a question about people starting a fashion label and how to get in touch with people like that, hit up stylists, don't hit up celebrities, right? Because for a stylist, you're providing value, right? You're an unknown brand. You're hopefully providing a product that is different than other products out there. And you're like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'd love to send you a couple pieces if you're willing to gift them. If not, here's my lookbook and what I just shot. If you want to pull anything, let me know.
Yeah.
And do it like that. And stylists love that because part of their job is knowing the new next best thing, right?
Right. That makes sense.
Just answer the question. Are you in Drake's DMs or not? Just please. We need to know.
We're XO people over here. We're not over here.
Fair.
That is super fair. Is there one celebrity that you've always dreamed of dressing?
I mean, for a long time, it was Future. But now, like, we get to dress him. I love A$AP Rocky. For me, my real dream. So when I first started working with my PR company, they asked for a list of celebrities that we want to be on.
Oh, that's sick.
And at the top of my list was Julian Casablancas, and they hit me back with who? And I was like, the lead singer of The Strokes, obviously. It was like Julian Casablancas, Alex Turner, and Karen O were on the list. They're like, what does this matter? I'm like, I don't care if it doesn't matter to you. It matters to me.
This is a dream. I'm trying to realize my dreams here. Oh, I love that. I love that. Amazing. Well, yeah, like, I mean, talking about like collaborations, like how does, we're in a world where everything is a collab. There's, arguably more collab lines than there are like real lines these days. And we see it left, right, and center in a multitude of ways. And sometimes it's done well. Sometimes it's done, kind of not so well. So yeah, how does working with like another brand or with someone else kind of like either enhance or maybe like detract from like your creative output as a brand?
I mean, ideally working together should never detract, but obviously we all know as creatives, like compromise can happen, or you can just be really stiff and, then collabs don't happen.
100%.
I've had a lot of different experiences. I actually haven't collaborated with too many like brands. Like there's no like Mr. Saturday Nike collab or anything like that yet.
One day.
Yeah, one day. I've collaborated with like bigger brands recently. We obviously worked together on that OLG collab.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting project that took a lot of, I don't want to say compromise. Like, yes, it for sure did take compromise, but it took a lot of like perspective shift and understanding their customer versus our customer and what the real like meaning and message was behind the product and how we could also, as a brand, educate, I guess, our client or whatever you want to call OLG on, you know, the real way to pursue their goals. Because I think a lot of the times when people approach us, it's like, how do we reach the youths?
Yeah.
You know, and it's
and the youngins. No, but I'm Gen like, Z. Let's be clear.
I don't know what Dom and I are. But a lot of the time, you know, there's like a clear goal in mind, and then people see tips of the iceberg along the way. They're like, oh, I saw this brand did this, and Hypebeast that, and whatever. And they don't understand that below those like floating tips of icebergs, there's just like years of work, right? And so really the best way I find when somebody reaches out to us for a collaboration like that to work together is allowing us to be true to our brand and finding a way for it to fit in with theirs because they're trying to expand into our sort of demographic.
Like, world,
I feel like it's super hard to even start a collaboration if there isn't a little bit of a natural fit or like there's got to be some sort of
overlap. Like if your world isn't a Venn diagram, then there's no like
I think that like that whole, you know, when the OLG collab came out and started to hit, like even here we were like, wow, like OLG, like Joey's doing a collab with them, like it's really corporate, right? But I think that when we started to understand like the true meaning behind that collaboration, the potential for this, you know, clothing line to like literally change someone's life if they ended up winning the lottery through that piece, like it really like, you know, gave legs to the whole thing and made it even go beyond what a normal collaboration, you know, could even realize for someone. It wasn't just about giving someone clothes. It was literally about like realizing someone's dreams, right? Yeah, opportunity, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I never even considered it from that perspective. For me, it was really more about pushing the boundaries of what a collaboration could be and what the lottery was. Obviously, if one of you wins a ton of money, you clearly owe me some money.
He gets a cut.
I get a cut.
Points.
Yeah, it's on the inside of the It's on the inside of the hoodie. Just read the tag.
Just read the fine print.
No, for me, it was like really more about how can we push that boundary, right, between like the government, because that's how the lottery works here, and fashion. But in other collabs, you know, sometimes it's more about expanding the world of two people really collaboratively. Like for this season, for our runway show, I worked with this artist, Esther Lang. Or sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, Esther. It might be Liang.
We'll correct it in post. Don't worry.
She's a close friend of mine. I met her through House.
Nice.
And she's this incredible fine artist. And she sent me these images of a job she was applying for her technical assessment, which she got the job. No kidding, because the images were insane. And so she actually did a bunch of like hand-painted leather pieces in our most recent collection. And those pieces were actually also at the same time a collaboration with Roots, which is, if you guys don't know, it's a Canadian heritage brand that makes mostly sweatwear and leatherwear, or leather goods.
Canadian brand, yeah.
So it was sort of like a three-way collaboration where Esther was helping me realize my creative vision by painting graphics onto leather pieces, and Roots at the same time was being really helpful by providing us leather goods and factories and helping us bring like the sartorial vision to life. And so that was like a really interesting three-way collaboration for me. That was like three different Canadians doing something on a world scale that had never really been done before.
Yeah.
And sometimes collaboration's just about that. And those work out very differently, right? OLG is very like deliverable focused, and something like that is a lot more organic, and it's just like, let's make what we make.
You mentioned House too, so I kind of want to go back to that because I feel like it is hard to talk about your story without talking about that relationship and kind of the role that they played in, you know, the building of Mr. Saturday. So if you want to touch on that a little.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without House. That's just like a fact. I think House in some ways is like kind of misunderstood by the public of what it is. It truly is like a first of its kind think tank and incubator. I call it like the Y Combinator of like art, pretty much.
That's sick.
Pretty fair.
But yeah, I mean, you know, House, when I was first starting in 2018, gave me access to mentors and a network of people who really expanded my perspective on what it meant to be a creative professional. And it also, truthfully, you know, through the educational program itself, felt like a creative MBA. So working on all those different case studies. I mean, in the education, you'd be handed a real brief from like Twitter from 2 years prior.
That's sick.
Right? And then they'd be like, well, how would you have done this? And they won't show you what the campaign was, but then you do it.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting way to learn, things that I already kind of knew because I went to Western and studied business
Same.
and philosophy.
Go
Shout out
Stangs.
Western gang.
Shout out Stangs.
But, it really just felt like a creative MBA, and like it showed me how to apply my knowledge from my previous education and now. And then for people in my cohort who hadn't gone to university, I mean, there were courses in accounting and in IP and in law. Like, it was just so enlightening. And then I think on a broader scale, once I finished house, that's when like the real partnership between them and I started. I think I just was, like, if you know me, if there's a door that I want to go through, like I'm gonna bang my way through that.
Yeah.
And so really, I was
sure.
just
The
like
Kool-Aid,
all over the house staff to
Show
be
the
like,
clip.
how can we do this together, that together? And we ended up doing this pop-up in Paris together that was called Index that Mac was actually at. Shout out Mac.
Shout out Mac. Get on the producer mic. You have it for a reason.
I'm here. I loved Index. It was fun.
And that was like our first big thing together. And then, since then it's just really been like, it's about reciprocity, I think, right? It's like a lot of give and take. I'll still go there and mentor students or teach workshops.
Also, Joey, thanks for taking me to Paris.
And forgetting your birthday.
I'm not salty at all that I didn't go to Paris.
Just to be clear, Joey told me he was taking me to Paris for my birthday and then forgot about my birthday like the entire day.
Why do you think none of my relationships work out?
You know what, Mac? That's why you have to let no one forget about your birthday, okay?
I mean, I haven't since.
Well, no, you touched upon like the networking aspect, and I feel like even the word networking is so cliche in 2022, but I was thinking about it when we were kind of preparing for the episode and talking about going beyond either just sitting at your laptop and focusing on your work and focusing on your creative, or just focusing on the networking, and that like in today's day and age it really is about a meshing of those things, and that I think a lot of creatives either get stuck in one camp or the other. They're not focusing enough on their work, or they're not focusing enough on the networking. How have you managed to balance those two things and go out all the time and be with people and be present, but also be able to create like a full line the next day and not be like totally haggard and bummed out?
Balancing being a businessman and an artiste.
Yeah, the balance of the business and the artist. Perfect.
I mean, yeah, balance is a tough thing. I am definitely one of those people who, when people ask that whole work-life balance question, it's just like, how badly do you want this?
Yeah.
And my work is my life. Like, it's not like I get home at 9 p.m. and like I'd be happy just chilling and watching TV. Like, there's things on my mind that I want to do, and I'm gonna do them because I love doing them. Right. It also helps that I only get paid when I work. So
a little bit of incentive.
Yeah, so it's a bit of the carrot and the stick, but I think you just gotta balance both. Part of it for me is that going out is kind of that release from grinding all day or all week, and thankfully when I go out, because I love nightlife so much and because it's so much part of my work, being in that sort of feeds the brand at the same time, right? So I just really built a life around what I'm doing that kind of supports it no matter what I do. But you also do have to go out and be your own champion. Like, thankfully, I've grown into one of those people. When I was in high school and first year, I was so timid and quiet, not outgoing, but not my own champion kind of person.
Yeah.
But you got to be making stuff and also kind of shouting about it, or or wearing it if you make clothes or doing something like that. Like, how many things do I make 10% of and then send to you immediately, right?
Yeah, it's true.
I'm like, here's the rawest form of this idea. How fucking sick is this? And you're like, yeah, I don't know if I 100% see it. I'm like, yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna keep working on it right now. But
yeah,
there's one thing that I do really want to understand, and one question I've been waiting to ask you probably for 2 years.
Wow.
Here it comes. But basically, from what I've heard, first, you're Mac's friend, you're Carl's friend. We shared an office. What is the cruel Mr. Saturday or origin story?
I actually don't even know this either. Yeah, I genuinely don't know this because I met you through Cruel. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you ask Carl, it's all over $700.
Carl says no comment.
Please elaborate.
No, so I've known
Carl paid $700 to be your friend.
That's crazy.
I've owed Carl $700 for 5 years. I knew Skylar before I knew any of you, purely just because he was a promoter. And then
The promoter.
Yeah, promoter Dragon Skylar. And I met Carl through that same thing, but we didn't like really know each other. And literally one day, I just like came into the office at 35 Liberty, and it was when I was still producing a lot when I was DJing, like making music. I walked into your office and I told Skylar I wanted to throw this party because I'd been doing all these paintings and making music and making T-shirts, and I was like, how can I like, you know, how can I show people that? Like, I had no idea. It was just like, this is what I do, and he's like, interesting. Let me get my business partner Carl, and literally like Carl, classic, so disgruntled, walks over. He's like, hey man, kind of tell me what you're doing, and he's like, oh yeah, you know what? I kind of see it. I could see you being like a Toronto art personality. And at that time when he said that to me, I go, you think I could be an art personality? Like, I'm like, you think I could be big in this city?
Gassing up your boy, you know?
Yeah, he didn't know me at all. He's like, I think maybe. I was like, wow, I couldn't even imagine what that would be like.
A star.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, like let's do an event together. We did this event at a club called Everly, which I don't think is called that anymore. And I wanted to call
I won't
it.
shout it out.
That's where I met my boyfriend.
Is it actually?
I'm not telling that story.
So the party was supposed to be called Meet Me in the Bathroom, which is a Strokes lyric. We ended up changing the name in the end, but it's kind of this moment where all these people I had known forever came to this thing, and they're like, wait, you paint and like make clothes and stuff? And it was under the name Mr. Saturday. And that's sort of where it all started. And from there, I think I got closer with Carl and Skylar. And I don't remember what steps led us to this, but you guys had Narcity working out of your office.
Yeah.
Narcity was moving out, and Carl's like, why don't you move in?
Mhm.
And I moved in. I actually shared like 200 square feet with our friend Scott.
Yeah.
Um,
Scott Goodwin.
and that's just like where it all started, and we
Yeah.
kind of built up from there. And I think
Wow.
it just like the close friendships just built up from all working from there, like,
Yeah.
10 hours a day every day.
Yeah, I think that's why it's been, it's been so easy to work together over time because, when we originally started to work together, the brand was in a really early stage. And I think that we were both at stages of our career where we were still trying to figure out that, our own creative process, what our output was. And since we did grow and develop over time, through doing photo shoots together and design collaborations and things like that, working together now and some of the projects that we've done since then, even though the scale's bigger, the process has been so fluid because I know that, one, you trust my creative output and Cruel's creative output as a team, but also we just know the brand so well that's very fluid. Like the Where Life is Just a State of Mind project, the 360 runway video, that one was so special to me because it was coming out of a time of such low creative output and kind of inspiration for me during the pandemic and feeling so like closed off.
We were all so separated.
And like not necessarily, the most fluid creative environment to work in. But being able to do that with, Norman Wong on set, shooting like remote photo, doing the full 360 video runway, which I don't think was anything any of us had really imagined of.
I still
that
haven't seen
time.
anybody do that.
Yeah.
That was my favorite creatively from like a concept. That's probably one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on, period.
That was my next question, actually.
Yeah, that was so
it's that.
Took it right out of my mouth.
That and the real life runway.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
If I may jump in for a second, I still stand by the notion that that's the first time that was done like globally.
Yeah,
that
ever.
Sort of fashion presentation,
Yeah.
or runway
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, certainly a really special time and I think really indicative of the creative process that we've developed over the years and our ability to work very closely and get shit done that's just, cool, not to
Can
pump
you
our own
maybe like
tires.
shed light on any of the kinds of collaborations you're looking to do like in the future? Like do you want to keep that same style or kind of move towards a different style of collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things on my mind that I'm trying to do. I think for me, it's always about how can we keep expanding the world. Even with that project,
Mhm.
it was how do we establish the world of Mr. Saturday, because it was so unknown at that time. And I was just like, all right, like by any means necessary, we're going to bring this vision to life. And, I take that same approach into looking at collaborations in the future. Some dreams of mine are for sure to collaborate with museums. I feel like it's kind of like underserved, if that's like the way to say it. Seeing ourselves as a wearable museum and documenting so much of history and fashion itself having so much to do with history. I could see a lot of museum collaborations in the future. I love hotels. If anybody knows me well, like I like would live in a hotel if I could. So yeah, working with somebody in that space is definitely on my mind. Outside of that, what's really been, haunting my dreams lately is doing the creative direction for a visual album. I have some ideas for artists that like some I know, some I don't know. But visual albums are some of my favorite things, like Frank Ocean's Endless. Obviously, I feel like this is a real cliche thing to say, but Kanye West's Runaway full-length film,
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
those are just such unique projects, I think.
Yeah.
And I would love to do something like that. I think working more closely with other artists is a big part of our roadmap in the next 12 to 24 months.
Nice,
Love
nice.
that.
I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about creative process, because I think that over time, developing from being a young artist, and still trying to figure out, and situate yourself in the world to kind of where you're at now. Like, how has that process changed? How have you gone from a blank page to a full collection that we see on the runway? And yeah, how has that process changed since you started the brand to now?
I think I've definitely gotten better at it because I've gotten more practice, but to be frank, the full collection was always in mind. It was just like a limitation of skill or budget, which is always still, like, with how big my fucking appetite is, always still a problem. But
That's my favorite game. It's like turning Joey's vision into a tangible thing.
Yeah.
Working within a budget with Joey.
Yeah. There's a famous fashion designer, very well known and respected in the world, by the name of Philip Plein.
Yeah,
And
of course.
one of Philip's famous quotes is, "What's a budget?" So
You should get that tattooed on you.
No, I mean, as much as I would love to have more in common with Philip Plein, I feel like I'll leave that for him.
Fair.
But yeah, I mean, for me, the limitation has always just been like skill set and taste. I think, like I said, I always wanted to be in music, and I think, or would like hope that I have a high taste level in music. But when I would try to make music, I was like really acutely aware that I was unable to produce at my taste level. I was like, I would make a song, I'd be like, this is shit. Does not
That
sound.
self-awareness is not recognized in a lot of artists. So.
It's like, this does not sound like what it did in my head. But when I started doing clothing, I was like, oh, this looks like what I'm trying to make, right? Like, it's like, even at the beginning, I'm like, oh, this is close to what I'm trying to do. I know I'm getting closer. And so for me, that was the biggest hurdle at the beginning. And I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of creatives, is like matching your skill set to your taste level and like winning that battle either internally or externally, because other people will just shit on you if your skill set isn't at your taste level, and then you lose steam. So it's a lot of that is like an internal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think knowing that, people are listening, people are watching, and we're being given access to tools and places that I could only have dreamed of like a few years ago. I think the biggest challenge right now for us is always just like bandwidth and time. Outside of the constant struggle of budget, it's bandwidth and time.
We're always back to that.
Yeah, and it's not like budget in the way of like, we're not making money, but I think it's just like I'm so far from where I see the brand being that the ladder rungs that I'm trying to skip with every step now are a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Right?
Going back to that process and like inspiration, is there any trends right now that's kind of like inspiring the brand, or just anything like personally that you're looking forward to?
I mean, this also might sound cliche, but I try to be like as anti-trend as I can. I think that focusing on trends is a really dangerous thing for a fashion company, because our production schedules are like about a year, right? And so if I'm looking at something that you see now as a trend, then I'm already behind. Now, definitely, like, when you're a bit more inside in the industry, you see what other designers and brands are working on at the same time as you. So, you're ahead of that, but I still try to block that out because I make my worst creations when I think like that.
Yeah.
Lately, what I've been finding inspiring is going further back in time. So our party culture history always used to be the 1980s and 70s primarily. Yeah. Looking at New York, looking at Europe, going into Ibiza, things like that.
Ibiza, actually.
And looking at those things. And then, not that I hit a wall there, but I was like, okay, I don't want to be redundant. And so for Fall Winter 21, both directions at once, I went back to the 1880s, I believe. And looked at like English party culture then. And then after that, I did a collection on Kraftwerk, which is in the 1980s again. But then following that collection, I was actually looking at their inspiration, which was in the 1920s, and even going back into the 1880s again with the origin of cabaret. And for me, I've actually found a lot of inspiration going further and further back and looking at silhouette and what fashion meant at that time, but also in a society that was so based on rules and classes. seeing more similarity in that to today than you would maybe take at surface level is something that's been really intriguing to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say society's still
society's
so
still
much
very
on
class based.
classes.
But so for example, something that I think is really like interesting is that parties at that time in the UK specifically were like a costume party or a tea party or an evening party or a music party. Those had specific guidelines and rules, and if you didn't host that or attend that in a specific way, like you wouldn't be able to host another party or even be allowed in. And now what I think is so cool is that we've actually taken away the like pretension from that, and we've taken it away from just this really upper class thing of people who are, you know, not being very productive to society and really just staying within their own like, you know, class bubble. And we're seeing that in these like a really amazing kind of niche parties that allow people's cultures to shine, right? Like you'll see an Afrobeats party and it'll be like, if you're coming to this party, you better fuck with Afrobeats. You better be respectful to the music, respectful to the guests. We're not going to fuck with anybody who is homophobic, transphobic, anything. Like there's rules to go to parties now,
100%.
but those rules are inclusive. Whereas back in the 1880s, those rules were very exclusive. But funny enough, they're rules nonetheless. And rules to some sense are what makes parties and nightlife function. 100%. So exploring that has been something that I found really inspiring lately.
That's awesome. I can't wait for the medieval party scene inspired Mr. Saturday line.
This would be very Liam Clark. Shout out Liam
Clark. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap this up, I feel like the two of us just kind of want to know what's in store. What's next? What's the next 5-10 years looking like? Metaverse? Who knows?
Web3, what is it? We don't know.
Next 5-10 years, we could be at Web 4. I mean, people are already talking about that. But I think for Mr. Saturday, for sure, it's like, I mean, I said it earlier, you know, the trajectory of where I see us going creatively, I don't even feel like I'm close to yet. So you're going to see a lot more of the types of, you know, activations and initiatives that you've been seeing, but just on a higher level. So, you know, more runway shows, more collaborations and campaigns. And we have a couple really cool collaborations coming up that I can't really talk about now. Maybe by the time this is out, they'll already have happened.
Just say it. We'll bleep them out. We'll bleep out the names. Just please say it.
We're going to bleep it anyway,
That's
right?
an amazing bleep.
That's good. That's good.
We'll bleep it out. We'll bleep out that brand name you just said.
Yeah. Anyway. And, you know, I think that obviously Web3 and the metaverse are a huge topic of discussion for every industry right now. For us, you know, I think that they play an important role in art and culture and that they're here to stay. Or, you know, I think that they will play an important role in art and culture and that right now that role is a bit undefined. So if they play a role in those spaces, obviously they're going to be part of the Mr. Saturday world. And we definitely have some ideas of how we're going to integrate those. I think authentication is a huge space, especially in the luxury goods market. And we actually have a collaboration with a really famous Swiss watch company. Not a collaboration, but we're working on something with a famous Swiss watch company in that space, which hopefully you'll see in the next 6 to 12 months. But yeah, outside of that, you know, I think the biggest thing for me is obviously the future is really uncertain, but, you know, I just want to make sure that we're still here 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know I speak for the entire Cruel team when we say we're really excited for all the work we have coming up soon. Stay tuned for all that. But Dom, anything else from you?
Oh, I just really appreciate you coming through, chatting with us, giving us a bit more insight than we might get on the average, you know, dinner together. Maybe a little bit more vision on the brand, and yeah, just really appreciate you contributing to the podcast here, and hopefully, you know, the audience does as well. So yeah,
thank you guys for having me. Thank you to anybody who made it all the way through this. And,
appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys have next too.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Stay tuned for episode 3, 4. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, farewell. Peace out.